I hope you can. Are you going to do that debate with the King Critical?
Yes, yeah. I'll just say it, yeah. I won't be not transparent about it, but I hope to.
Yeah,
if he agrees. I'm pretty sure he has.
Good. That'll sure be some entertainment. Anyway,
hopefully we can get him on here. we'll host it on this channel. That'd be fantastic. All right, Lewis, thanks so much. We all hope that we can hear from you again soon. Best of luck. We'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye, sir. All right, guys. Sorry, it's our final call. If you're in the queue and you're not the next person, you're out of luck. But we've got one more call coming up here. This is Kunbula. I'm not saying that right, but I'll call you Q. We can't see you. Well, actually, Zulu and I can see you, but the viewers at home can't see you. But can we hear you?
I can also see him. I don't have
only me. Only I can see you. All right. I can sort of hear you. Try again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect. Definitely good enough. All right. So for the sake of expediency, you're calling in. You can ask us a question. You can offer us a challenge. I'll try to take a bit of a step back this time and let our co-hosts do most of the answering. The floor is yours, Kunvala. Why don't you tell us what you're calling in about, what your challenge is, what your question is, and we'll give the floor to our co-hosts.
Okay. So do you guys think colonialism is illegal in your ideology?
All right. That's a great one. Floppo, you want to take it away?
Sorry, I was having trouble finding the mute button. I believe so, yeah. Because it requires like the dispossession of other people. So, I mean, do you want to elaborate on the question more, or so my answer is just no, I guess.
I believe colonialism is an example of things that capitalism would advocate. Despite it being a form of aggression, because of when you have like a free market within your jurisprudence and you have competitors, it would be in your interest to do that colonialism, to take your private army somewhere and have access to cheaper labor and resources by force.
If I could jump in here. Oh, sorry, you go ahead. If you were.
No. Oops. Sorry. For some reason, my computer's bugging out. I'll let you do it.
It's a sign that you're right, Kumbala, because clearly all four of us are just jumping through the gate at the same time to talk about colonialism.
I would say now this perspective might differ from some of my co-hosts, depending on how they're interpreting the history of it. I think colonialism has been unfairly maligned in large part. It is, for the most part, an exportation of capitalism to these regions. Now, there were certainly colonial abuses that occurred, but for the most part, it was a massive improvement over what came before it. And you can see this by the fact that when it stopped, well, is Zimbabwe really better than Rhodesia? Is that what we're to believe? That it would be better to be in Zimbabwe than Rhodesia? I don't think so. I don't think that's true. I think a lot of the hatred of colonialism is
example.
White people.
Something that I want to hand this over to Anarcho-Econ, so brace yourself. But I want to give you this as a sort of transition. One of the great strengths of anarcho-capitalism, of Austrian economics, of individualism as a methodology, is that we are under no obligation to accept a package deal. And certainly, I don't think we will. So colonialism's a single word, but it encapsulates a huge concept. Now, an entire historical event, nobody in their right minds, and I mean this, no sane person is going to say, yes, well, I agree with every single thing that happened between the years 1650 and 1899.
Well, I specifically mean the part of it that would violate the non-aggression principle.
Precisely. So the number one thing about ANCAPs that's more essential than anything else is that we're against violations of the non-aggression principle. So if you take any colonial enterprise and you say, okay, well, we came, this ship came ashore and killed a bunch of people, and then traded freely with other people. Well, we're against the first thing and we're for the second thing, but we won't accept it as a package deal. Now, Anarcho-Econ, I've given my transition. I'd like you to have the floor for a moment.
I was asking about capitalism incentivizing it, regardless of its ethics. I know that it's already like you're against it. You're against the aggression, But I'm
Okay.
speaking in terms of does not capitalism incentivize this?
So if we're moving the claim to specifically, would there be these massive, like, I don't know, takeovers of land by big corporations or something like that? Well, I mean, there's a couple of cases we can look at. Let's take two big corporations. One tries to take over the other. That strikes me as massively unprofitable because they're going to have to go to war or something like that, and that's going to completely destroy the capital structure of essentially both firms. Now, if you have a massive firm and they want to take over, this massive firm, they have a complete control over like everything in a given area or something, and there's like this little itsy bitsy guy, then maybe the massive firm can take it over. But that doesn't really establish anything meaningfully against ANCAP because it would apply equally to a state. A massive United States could take over a tiny country essentially in a day if they wanted to, just nuke them to death. But if we're talking about what is incentivized by the market, well, certainly the incentive, if everyone's being rational, is to engage in non-aggression because of mutual profit. So if you have two parties trading with each other, they both
that actually apply outside of their shared jurisdiction.
I'm not sure what you meant by outside of the jurisdiction.
Let's say you're in a jurisdiction where you're all ANCAPs, you're all like you don't have a state, so you all have access to private armies, you all have access to defend yourself. So of course it's unprofitable to fight each other over resources, but because of competition, you want to have special access to some resources somewhere or to some labor somewhere. So someone could take an army and race to areas that are unable to defend themselves, and take that area for yourself to have exclusive access to some kind of resource, or to have like a cheap access to some kind of resource.
Let me jump in there really quick, Anarcho, if I can.
Sure.
The thing you got to understand about, you're asking about capitalism, but I want everyone to understand that we're advocates for anarcho-capitalism specifically. So private property is why we are including the word capitalism in our label. That's what we're using to communicate about ourselves. But private property is a requirement for the free society, but it is not sufficient. So it's not enough to have private property that now you're in the world that we're advocating for. Certainly, there's no doubt, and I don't think there should be any doubt from anyone on the panel here, you can have a society that has private property and still has a terrible philosophy. That's fine for us because we're not trying to achieve merely that there is private property. So if it were to be the case, let's say hypothetically, that a society that just has private property but has any philosophy to go along with it could be bad. The people in that society could do bad things. Absolutely, it could be. But it poses no threat whatsoever to anarcho-capitalism because we are not merely advocating for private property. We're advocating for something more than that. We simply recognize that private property is one of the many requirements for that. So it is no criticism to us to notice that people who have private property can do bad things. Julie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so the ANCAP claim in particular is just about the legal side, but there is a broader moral aspect to it as well. And yet, so on this question of colonialism, well, I mean, we are able to compartmentalize and go, well, to the extent that it's aggression, we're of course against it. I think that's about as clear an answer you can get. Is colonialism a crime? Well, the parts that are crimes, the parts that aren't crimes are not crimes.
Back to you,
And how does your society disincentivize it?
How does our society disincentivize crime?
Yeah, so what is our society as you perceive it? Because our society is not just whenever people have private property. Our society is a society that has the non-aggression principle. So in the very first place, you're asking this question about people who see aggression as wrong in the first place. So what could be a bigger disincentive to aggression?
You can have, for example, like a Christian society, but it's full of people who don't abide by Christianity because they were incentivized to not do that. If not everyone would follow the principles.
Would it be a Christian society?
So
our advocacy would be that if somebody tries aggressing against your property, it's your right to shoot them in the head until they can no longer aggress against your property. I mean, that's the answer there.
Yes, but because of the competition in the market between you and your competitors, for example, At some point, a person who would cheat or would do a crime to succeed in that competition will be ahead because of this, and that's my point. Colonialism is an example,
You can't be ahead
aggression
if you no longer
to-
have a head, right? If we execute you and take your head off, then you can no longer be ahead.
Am I understanding correctly that you're under the impression that the people who are advocating for a free society haven't considered that people are going to cheat?
No, I know that you considered it, but what are the? I'm curious about your suggestions of how to deal with that specifically.
So if you have an apple on your desk and you own it and somebody takes the apple from you, you are justified in doing whatever's necessary to get that apple back. And if you're playing, if you enter into any kind of contract, whether it's a card game or it's a casino slot machine or whatever it is, and the contract you discover was entered into under false pretenses, then it's the exact same thing. You never exchanged what you gave up because you gave it up on conditions that were never met. Like, for example, if I give Zulu an orange in return for an apple, and I bite into the apple to discover that it's just styrofoam painted red, then I never gave him the orange because the condition of the orange was that I was getting an apple in return, which was never satisfied. So he's got my orange over there, and I can go get that orange back because it's mine. To ask a question about cheating in a sort of general sense, it's the same thing. When somebody cheats at something, then there is clearly an aggression taking place. Somebody is taking control of a scarce thing that's not theirs, and the non-aggression principle, the legal framework that we're offering, has a very clear approach to this. You can be justified doing whatever is necessary to get it back. Now, so for example, let's compare that to the statist reality that we live in right now. If somebody burgles my house, well, right off the bat, they know that I can't defend myself because I'm not allowed to own any implements that I could defend myself with. Moreover, anything that I use to defend myself, this is Canada for anyone who's curious. If I were to grab a knife, for example, and stab an intruder with the knife, well, I've still committed a federal crime because I've used something in a means to hurt somebody, even though that's not its intended purpose. So not only can I not have explicit weapons, I can't even make use of things in a weapon way. That's what happens. So I have
That's
to
a
wait
pretty
now.
stupid-
I have to wait for the police to arrive. Except where I live, the police are going to show up 45 minutes or later if they show up at all. So those are a bazillion incentives to be a burglar because you know that people can't defend themselves. You know that help's not going to arrive. Those are incentives that promote burglary. Now, in a free society, I can shoot you in the face with a shotgun and kill you dead, which is a implement I would be very likely to possess. That sounds like a very strong disincentive to me. Floppa, what do you think about this? Does that sound like a society you'd want to be robbing houses in compared to the current one?
No, I definitely wouldn't want to commit any such trespassing on that society. But I would like to add that we're not against violence and totality. We're against unjust violence. So I advocate all the time that people do things to make themselves as competent as possible, to protect themselves in any way, so that we can build some type of cultural and social disincentive to commit crimes like this. So it's why I train in martial arts all the time, and I shoot a lot of guns. And yeah, so anarcho-econ, I guess.
That's part of why I was talking about jurisprudence. So I was saying you are cheating by colonizing people who can't defend themselves. So you can defend yourself. Other people in this jurisdiction can defend themselves, but I can go to defenseless people and I will have an advantage by colonizing them. So what will the society do to me in that case? What can
So
they do
if
to me
you-
without violating the principle?
You seem to like this must be a quirk of being a statist. I don't mean that in a condescending way, but you keep referring to this jurisprudence. We don't apply
I mean,
the
like the
NAP.
reason where you all
We-
have your, you don't have
We know,
your state, but you have your
I know.
principles.
I know what you mean. The NAP is not applied by fiat. The NAP is not applied by like me and Zulu have the NAP, but Floppa just doesn't have it yet. No, everybody on Earth is a human being, and everybody on Earth has the same rights. So if you it's in my interest to trade with the people from Africa. It's in my interest to trade with the people from Southeast Asia. It's in the interest of the companies around me. It's in everybody's interest. And so if you live in a world with people who actually understand social cooperation, which hopefully we're heading in that direction, you already benefit. This is how Milton Friedman, who I don't even consider an ANCAP, but Milton Friedman has the wonderful presentation on the pencil. Think about how many people all over the world have to cooperate. People, like he says, who might hate each other if they knew each other in real life, but it doesn't matter. We're all cooperating to make the world a better place. We're using economics. We're using the price mechanism, right? Now, that's the incentive that's natural to human beings. And if you have some thieves, it doesn't matter if they're robbing people in Africa because you're saying, well, there's this power imbalance. Yes, of course, there's always going to be a power imbalance where you have somebody exploiting somebody else using force. But what's happening here is there's in our society, everybody's going to recognize, hey, those are the people who mine our gold. Those are the people who build the, what are they called? The ferrules for my pencils, right? That's where my graphite comes from. And the local people around there, they'll defend themselves. You're not going to trade with a container ship comes to your shipping terminal, says, hey, we're here with all of our plundered goods from Africa. First of all, no one's going to insure that tanker. Second of all, the fact that it's stolen means that any person would be justified in returning it to its original owner, and nobody would be justified in purchasing it, right, Zulu? I mean, I want you to jump in here, Zulu, and help me out here, but it seems to me like the only way you could get to where you're at here is to make the assumption that you keep saying jurisprudence, like you don't realize that the natural state of human beings is cooperation.
Yes.
What do you think, Zulu? Did I capture it correctly there?
Yeah.
In practice, at least you will start somewhere without a state. You wouldn't have this cooperation everywhere at all times.
You're completely, I hate to cut you off, but you're completely missing my point, because I already, like, my answer takes into account already that there could be an ANCAP society in one place, but not everywhere. That is what I was responding to already.
Your response was that there is like they don't get insurance, they maybe lose
No, that's
customers.
the very last thing I said.
Yeah, so what would they lose if they took the access everyone else has? If they say, like, I homesteaded Congo right now, I just killed its people and I homesteaded it.
Zulu, my answer was in vain. I'd like to see if you might have better.
So let me think about the rational incentives here. You know, we're all rational people and we're talking about incentives. Let's say my business plan is that I'm going to kill off and destroy the people who are producing the goods that I'm then taking to the world, right, to the civilized world. That strikes me as a very non-sustainable business practice, right? And it should to anybody who purchases from me, right? Why would I rationally want to purchase from somebody who is stealing from other people who produce those things? Because then it's making sure that that production is less capable of going forth, right? I'm going to get it's going to be much better for everybody in the long run if those people are not robbed, because then the production can actually continue.
I don't know. I mean, the colonists were able to sell their stuff just right. They didn't have this issue. Why do you think that?
Sure, it was to the extent that was happening, it was an irrational system and not what we're advocating for. Like, it wasn't ANCAP back in those days, you know.
So was the issue that they weren't rational, or that they were not materially like relevant to them, where the stuff came from?
Well, the issue was that they weren't rational, that they were to some extent thieving.
So
in proposing a superior alignment of incentives, we're not suggesting that nobody, like the incentives that take place are not supposed to imply that, oh, well, the incentives are better, so no one will ever be a burglar. I mean, you're going to have people burglarizing homes, even if they're rich, and the home that they're burglarizing is full of traps and firearms, because some people are just crazy. And they're going to do it for the rush. Some people are just bad, and they're going to do it because they're evil. When we're talking about an improvement in the incentives, it doesn't do any harm to us or our
there's
worldview.
A substantial enterprise. Like, there's a substantial.
Hold on. Only one of us can talk at a second. It doesn't do any harm for what we're advocating for to suggest that, well, look, somebody has stolen before. Of course, there's always going to be stealing. We have to ask ourselves very carefully, well, what is the implication of that? Does that mean that the incentives weren't maximized? Of course not. There's no implication there that causes trouble for what we're advocating for.
But what I was saying is the difference is, like, when you're a burglar and when you're a colonist, you have a different, like, you could say, cost-benefit analysis. right? And so like the
No.
benefit of the colonist is much bigger, and they can actually like benefit from it.
Anarcho-Econ, you want to chime in?
I mean, yeah,
I have
something
an idea. Like, what if they just trade with irrational people? What if they just steal the stuff and they trade with irrational people, and they don't trade with rational people who are
Okay.
and
Something I'll say is, aside from just a legal principle, I think a good way to understand the NAP is like the civilizational, attitude. Like, to the extent that people adopt the NAP and are rational, the corresponding society will be incredibly prosperous. So if people truly understand this, then they're going to understand that if I'm violating the NAP, I'm destroying some amount of production. I'm destroying some amount of wealth. And so if they are rational, then they won't want to do that. They won't want to steal from the irrational people, because they'd understand that even these irrational people can produce for them, and they can be traded with. So, if you just have someone who's really irrational, they might violate the NAP, but that would be a very bad decision on their part, right? So we're saying that's a bad decision, but it's not like some the NAP is going to like embody somebody and they're going to like stop them from aggressing or whatever. It's just that if you're rational, then you will follow the NAP because you'll recognize that you'll be better off overall.
But how so? For the colonist individually, how would he be worse off when he's colonizing?
The colonist is worse off because, as someone brought up in the YouTube comments, I think, tell them about comparative advantage, which is a very, pretty basic economic principle. I'm not sure exactly if you know about it, but, comparative advantage says that it's not necessarily best if you're controlling everything, right? It's not best if the colonizer goes in and controls everything, because, the people there might actually be able to produce more efficiently than the colonizer. So it's not just about, it's a division of labor. The colonizer is like, I'm going to produce shoes, and the people over there that I could colonize, they're going to produce crops. And, it's not better if the colonizer is just producing everything.
Yeah, I think it's an example of context dropping. The context being dropped specifically is, how did the prosperity come to be in the first place? It came to be because people were productive, because they were free. So if you're trying to reap those rewards, you're dropping the context of how those rewards came to be in the first place. That is why it is insufficient entirely in ethics to be a parasite.
Okay, but what if I just want the crops? Like you said, these other people can produce crops. What if I just force them
Again,
to
it's
produce
dropping the
crops?
context. Like saying I want is not ethics.
Well, it's not ethics, because I'm not asking about ethics. I'm asking like, how do you materially prevent these people from dominating the market?
You kill them.
You shoot them in the head, right?
Isn't that an act of aggression against them?
No.
It'd be
weren't violating
defense.
We got to take a time out here, because this is, I think, I have long operated on the assumption that this is the single most, like, you got to understand this to talk to an ancap or about ancap. Okay, what is aggression? Aggression is the initiation of conflict. It's not just force. I believe Floppa said that just recently. One of my two co-hosts did. I know one of you guys was talking about
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
So it is not the case that violence is aggression. We're against aggression. We're not against violence. So when you attack somebody else, so let's say there's three people. There's person A, B, and C. If person A attacks person B, then they're aggressing not because they're doing violence, because they're starting it. If person B defends themselves, they're not doing an aggression. They're doing a violence, but they're not doing an aggression. If person C sees what's going on, pun intended, and intervenes to protect person B, he's also not doing an aggression. This isn't like worth quibbling over. This is the foundation of what ancap is.
Yeah, okay, that actually answers the question. So if someone it turns out to be a colonist, I get to kill them, right?
Anybody who's doing, like, colonizing is a big word. Anybody who's doing aggression is
Like
putting
a violent
themselves.
colonist who shoots people in the head.
Yes, definitely. They're outside of the NAP. So not only are the people they're attacking justified in killing them, but everybody is.
Okay.
What we're making a case for is not that, aggressing on, or I think what you're trying to say is that even it may be, quote, better because the colonists have some type of clear advantage with the weaponry they have. So like, why wouldn't it be advantageous to just go and kill, I guess, the indigenous settlers or whatever? But what we're trying to say is that you would still have to prove that that's the case, and that working with them would be a worse alternative, is what I should say. Yeah. It goes back to the comparative advantage thing. And what we're saying is that our system incentivizes better alternatives or outcomes, and it's moral.
Yes, yes. So, okay, here is the thing. We've established that if anyone commits aggression, anyone can retaliate against them, right?
Correct.
So now, like, let's say this guy already has a private army and he sent it to Congo. So he already has the money to buy a private army that can commit aggression for him.
So all you're describing there, this is really simple. All you're describing there is people who are peacefully cooperating with each other. That's the people who follow the NAP versus an outside group that don't follow the NAP. That's all you're describing. And the simple answer to this, Zulu, jump in if you want to give. I know you know the spiel off the back of your hand here, or like the back of your hand. The people, like economic efficiency makes an extraordinary difference. And the free people are going to have every advantage to completely run circles around the aggressors. And if you want, I think Zulu would be happy to go over the specifics of why that is. But that question really is distilled into that simple fact. The question is just, how do people who follow the NAP defend themselves against groups of people who don't follow the NAP? The answer is it's just self-defense like normal. Insurance companies in particular are just an example of how we can organize that peacefully. I'm not saying it will be that way. I think it's probable. And the fact that our society is operating on the free market means that it would have every advantage in terms of efficiency. So hopefully that's a sufficient answer at face value.
Yes, fair enough. Cool. So I don't have any other question.
All right. Well, thanks so much for calling in. Before we go, I think you don't have to put up with this, but I'm really curious. I did a lot of talking. I'm wondering, maybe some of my co-hosts would like to ask you a question, or maybe there's something that they feel was unsaid that should that they'd like to get off their chest. Econ or Floppa?
I mean, I feel like everything was said. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just want to ask where you're from in terms of the accent. I know it's not like relevant, but I'm just curious.
I am from Egypt.
Oh, that's super cool.
Very nice. Yep. Okay.
Another example of a great colonial project, the Suez Canal, not built by the Egyptians, stolen by the Egyptians.
Dirty Zulu. Dirty Zulu. All right. Well, thanks so much for calling in, Kumbula. Everybody who's watching the stream, this should be recorded for all posterity. I've been giving Mr. Q a hard time for not calling in, and now that he has called in, I'm permanently deprived. I can no longer give him a hard time about it. So this is a grievous injury to my personal enjoyment, but I'm very glad that they did. Q, if you like, you can have the last word before we sign off for the night.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be here. I should call in later if I have the chance or something. I probably have more. I probably have better arguments or better questions or something.
Well, we would be very excited to hear from you, so we completely encourage it. If you give us a heads up, we'll try to accommodate you in any way that we can. We love to hear from non-ancaps very much. So I guess we'll call it there. That was Kunbula. Thanks so much for calling in. We'll just do some quick housekeeping, everybody. So this was a 3.5 hour long live stream. Thanks so much to all my co-hosts for staying around for this long. That's crazy. And these were some record numbers as well on our viewership. So thanks everyone for tuning in. It was super, super appreciated. We actually had tons of callers who didn't get on today. So hopefully that bodes well for future calls, that we'll be able to get them on and just have a healthy rotation going forward. I love answering the text questions, but the calls are just so much more fun. Now, everybody knows the normal co-host here, Liquid Zulu, above me. His channel's always linked in the description, but we had two special co-hosts today. Thanks so much for you both being here. Your channels are both linked in the description again. So if you guys want to follow our co-hosts, you should do so. You should do so. It's in the description just below. That's Based If True. That was our friend Floppa answering questions. And besides Based If True was Anarcho Econ. Both channels are linked in the description below. Here, I'll go through both of you very quick. Floppa, if you want to just quickly say, if there's anywhere else you'd like to direct people, or if you'd like to say anything else about your channel.
Yeah, I just want to say that I greatly appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm totally down to do it again. And I made a big mistake. I didn't make a post that I was going to be here. So hopefully I can bring in a much bigger audience if you do decide to have me again. But I will definitely recommend your show. Your show's awesome. It's one of the pivotal moments of me being, becoming ANCAP. And Anarcho Econ, I just met him recently, so it's very interesting that we just happen to be on the show together today. So everyone here has an awesome platform. Highly recommend. Zulu has an extremely well condensed courses on any questions you guys have. Zail Zulu, and I'll pass it off to Anarcho Econ.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say I had a lot of fun on this. I didn't know it was going to run for 3 hours, but I'm happy it did. We had a lot of cool questions, and of course, thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you guys and whatnot. More